So, as you know, Western media steps up smear campaign against Turkey and spreading misinformation about the local election results. So, why is Western media making manipulations over Turkey's election results?
You see, as a general rule, it is very okay if the media report this and that. But with the Western media, we have a big problem. These are cartel-owned media, big corporate media. And what they are doing is always in sync, in synchronization with politics. So if they attack a country, if they attack matters in Turkey, or if they attack Turkey as a whole, or Turkish policy as a whole, or the president, or the ruling party AKP, then this is policy. That is what the cartel-directed governments will do. So it is not so easy to just judge this is journalism, this is not journalism, this is a kind of political fight in the media field.
At the same time, European leaders showing their interest in Istanbul election. What is the reason behind that? Because it's a local election, and do you think that this is common? European leaders, do you think that European leaders interfere in other countries' local elections?
Yeah, that is very interesting. That is, of course, completely out of normality. And it shows the special interest these politicians are taking in changing and shifting policies in Turkey. This is a regime change effort, in fact. And the way the reporting was about the municipal election in Istanbul so far was very clearly anti-Erdoğan, anti-AKP, and they felt that their political friends in Istanbul are strong, that they need help from outside, and therefore they do this. And we can see this also very clearly in the last Bilderberg meeting. This is where the Western, heads of companies are meeting, envoys of the cartels and get their directions. And usually in the last years, this is very interesting to see, there was nobody from AKP in Turkey invited, but people from CHP and professors. So these people take a strong interest in how the universities work and how they can recruit young, intelligent people to their case.
When we read the articles and news in Western media about Turkey's mayoral election, we can see that they are taking sides. So, do you think that this is an immoral situation?
That is very clear, the breach of international rule of non-interference into interior affairs of another state. That's a very simple story. In this case, we have seen a very clear case, in fact, that they want to make Istanbul a story of shifting powers in Turkey. And they hope to be able to, muster support from the result of an Istanbul election to prove the case that President Erdoğan and the AKP rule in Turkey is going down. This is the story they need, and they do anything to get this story, including meddling into the interior affairs of Turkey.
So, what is the reason behind that? Do you think that they are afraid of power of Turkey? Because Turkey has a strong leader who can say no when needed.
This is exactly the case. They dislike strong leaders. So worldwide, in all the countries worldwide, we see efforts to undermine governments, whatever they are. So right now, for example, we have in Germany an undermining of the German government. And 2 days ago, we saw Chancellor Merkel meeting a very inferior president from Ukraine and trembling like anything because of the strain, of the stress. So this is it, and Turkey is under pressure because Turkey does not obey. It is buying the S-400 system from Russia after trying in vain for so long time to get the American Patriot system. But it was denied, access to technology was denied, access to taking part in the building of it, all denied. The Russians agreed, so the Turkish very rightly, and that is their own decision anyway, rightly or not, they decided to buy the S-400, and Washington is so angry, they retaliate in crazy measures because of just a deal. And that is interesting, but what is of course more important is the terror situation south of Turkey and northern Syria, and using of a terrorist-linked group, the YPG, to undermine Turkey and the security of the border. And Turkey is holding against that. That is not to the happiness of Washington. And again, we are talking about retaliation. Retaliation meaning, in this case, if a government is too strongly helping and furthering the interests of the nation and of the people, then they have to be undermined. And this is the effect we are seeing now in Istanbul.
So we know that they want to targeting Turkey. So can we say that Western media is a part of a bigger game?
Western media always is a part of a bigger game. I can give you one example from Germany. All the major networks and editors' rooms are infested, so to say, with personnel from the so-called Atlantic Bridge. That's an organization furthering American domination of Germany after the Second World War. We are not a sovereign country, that's very clear. Leading politicians sometimes say this openly, but very rarely. Or they can fight it, for example, to me in private, but the fact is very clear, we are not a sovereign country. And these journalists are to fulfill the cartel interests in politics and do this on the media way.
So European leaders always talking about democracy, but do you think that this approach is appropriate for democracy?
Yes, they talk. This is their job. They are paid to lie to the electorate, very, very clearly. The way they treat Turkey is completely dishonest. So what happens here is that the cartel media is attacking Turkey for political ends. These are not planned by the governments, they are planned by the cartels and by those powers who really rule our governments. So what we are, in fact, is a democracy simulation. This is not something which is only my analysis, but for example, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on food, a very old gentleman named Jean Ziegler, now over 80 years old. He said this fact, that the Western countries are democracy simulations, and that in fact they are ruled by the financial cartel. This is what he said for the last G20 summit in Hamburg last year. So we have this situation. Turkey is not obeying to these powers, and that means these powers have internally, not openly, declared some kind of war against the Turkish government unless the Turkish government obeys. Obeying means stop S-400 building, stop any action against YPG. This, for example, is the kind of pressure they put on Turkey.
And main opposition, Republican People's Party, Istanbul mayoral candidate, met with the moderator in a hotel 2 days before his live televised debate with AK-Parti candidate Yıldırım. So do you think that it is an immoral situation and they keep it a secret from public?
You see, if two people meet, this is their right. But if people in such a position 2 days before a major TV discussion, before a major, highly politicized election with global attention and the full, problem like we described in this interview, then of course it's completely immoral and the guy should be fired, very simply. He is unfit for the job.
So I'm wondering what will happen if that kind of thing happens in one of those Western countries, maybe in Germany.
Yeah.
What will happen? What will be the reaction?
If we ever get to know, since our system is like this, and since all our big news media are directed from outside, and since we are accustomed to their betraying the people, to their untruthful reporting, and to their warmongering even, for example, against our Russian neighbors. So this kind of story, or aggressively working against Turkey. This kind of story is so common to us that nobody in Germany would be astonished if this happens. And I think the repercussions, so the result of such an actions, would be quite weak. Yeah.
So, because they violated the format, the principles, and the spirit of an historical broadcast, so this is unfair for the other candidate, right?
Of course, it's completely unfair. That is, in fact, so dangerous that one should think about postponing the election, even if this is being wanted for. But this is Turkey. The Turkish governments and politics have to decide how they react. But I think the electorate is now very much the wiser and knows who is the cheating part in this game. That is very interesting.
I know that in Europe they're always having those kind of debates before elections. Can you give us more details about those debates? Because do moderators give questions to the candidates?
Yeah, you see, that's a very problematic question for me. I was for 14 years in medium or higher positions in first German public TV, ARD. And I have seen the workings, and I have seen the workings, deteriorate, and the morals deteriorate over the years since I went out in 1999, so exactly 20 years ago. So what do we have here? We cannot be sure that their treatment of politics and politicians and the whole situation is fair and correct and just. We cannot be sure. We hope so, but we are not sure. And my feeling is I won't give any guarantee that we are doing this correctly in Germany. Many people may try to do that, but the top is decisive and the top is corrupt. Sorry to say that.
So do you think that this moderator should quit?
Yeah, I said that. I think that would be a wise thing, because the trust is gone, and Turkey is in fact fighting for a way to get out of this global cartel rule. And this kind of moderator, this kind of TV journalism is unfit to accompany the country in a very, good and happy way to get free finally from this kind of rule.
So basically they are doing that because they don't want to see a stronger Turkey against European Union.
Yeah, exactly. This is the main thing. And unfortunately, all these European countries with their, sorry to say this, corrupt governments cannot see and cannot notice that in fact Turkey is fighting their fight. What Turkey does this day, all the European countries, including my own, including Germany, will have to do one day. So as a German, I feel very, very friendly to the special way Turkey is going right now. And I hope they succeed, because that will make it easier for Germany one day to get rid of foreign control.
Do you want to add something, Mr. Hörstel?
All the best to Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.